my first exposure to computers came when I was doing my thesis for MSc. During those good old days, we did not have any visual display unit. Got my first experience of a PC in the training center of SBI. I owe my entire career to the use of technology in banking. I'll give you a very simple example of how technology started to shape my life and how technology started to bring about the efficiency in operations in bank. Customers started to flock to us and the business boomed like never before.
So good morning, and I think I really appreciate that you agreed to, get the time out of your busy schedule. So this is like the magazine which AI is going to publish. So we did something for the healthcare in US, but we thought like the BFSI is like the big and vast the potential market in this part of the world, like the APAC and Middle East, Africa, and Europe. So we thought like we'll take the interview of leaders in this part of the world. They have, really, at the CXO level, and then comes with like exhaustive experience. So this is going to be like we will be talking about like personal journey, and then about like your professional development, then leadership, innovation, challenges, adaptation, your personal reflection, and future outlook. So this is how like we intend to be sequenced, but I think it can be free flow. So so we'll start with like your personal journey, where you can share some influences of your early life that has shaped up your career in technology and especially like the banking.
Yeah, sure. So, my schooling was in Lucknow, and my graduation and post-graduation were from Pantnagar, which was at that time in Nainital district in UP. Now, of course, it's in Uttarakhand. And I joined bank because at that time, bank PO was considered to be one of the most lucrative jobs. So, in fact, I first joined as PO in Corporation Bank, then I shifted as PO to Central Bank of India, and then moved to State Bank of India because the exams came in that sequence. Uh, and of course, my first exposure to computers came when I was doing my thesis for MSc in Pantanagar. So at that time, we had a computer called Fortran 4. I think Fortran stood for Formula Translation. And during those good old days, we did not have any visual display units. And punching had to be done on cards. So there was a card reader, and every line of code was punched in one card, and those cards then used to be fed in the card reader, and the system would read, and invariably there would be punching errors, and so therefore there would be a big list of errors that would be thrown, and you had to rectify those errors and then again do the process again. But this enabled me to process data for my thesis in a way that had never been done before. So had it not been for the computer, it would have been impossible for us, because the most we had at that time was a calculator. In fact, I was one of the few people, who had a calculator. Others did not even have that. So, but doing this kind of an analysis, statistical analysis on with a calculator was a near impossibility. So that was my first brush with a computer. And it told me, of course, before that, I had first seen computer in IIT Kanpur, where my brother was there. He was doing his BTech from IIT Kanpur. And it was something very interesting. Those computers had been, I think, gifted by the United States at that time. And so it was something very awe-inspiring. Uh, and later on, of course, when I moved into bank, when I joined the bank in 1987, at that time, PCs had just been introduced in India. And when I tell this thing, people start wondering, what are you talking about? I mean, we all PC is something which is sort of an era gone by. But at that time, PCs had just been introduced in India. In banks, they had not been introduced. But a year later, they did get introduced in the bank. And I got my first experience of a PC in the training center of SBI,
Mhm.
where the bank had set up a set of PCs for training the new employees or younger employees. So that is how I got exposure to PCs. And at that time, we used to have a word editing software called WordStar
Mhm.
and uh, a spreadsheet software called Lotus 123. So those were these software that we had at that time, and so that is what we started with, and today these things might not seem anything revolutionary, but uh, doing a simple computation. In fact, the first computation that we did was of salary. So
Mhm.
the what we did was, so we have the salary components are a basic, and then there is a DA, and then there are other components. The DA is a certain percentage of the basic salary, right? And
Mhm.
so here in the cell we entered is equal to basic multiplied by that
Yeah.
certain percentage, and we got the result. And you will not believe it, the joy that we got seeing that wow, this is something which has been computed automatically. It was something which was unbelievable. I'm telling you something, the late 80s, it was so that is how, the journey started. And of course, then once I got used to computers and computing, then the focus that I always had was, and in fact, I owe my entire career to the use of technology in banking. Had it
Mhm.
not been for this ability of mine to use technology for problem solving, I would not have been where I am. By the grace of God, I am among the very few people, who went up the ladder in the bank without missing any promotion except for once. Once I missed a promotion, that was DGM to GM. Otherwise, I got all my promotions in time, and that's the reason, why, although I joined the bank very late, uh, I still could manage to reach up to DMD. So my entire focus was from the very simplest tool. So as I mentioned to you, my earliest tools that we used, and that time we had the PCs used to be massive, giant CPUs,
Giant.
CRT monitors, right? And so the MS Word, sorry, the Word Star, Lotus 123. These are so very very rudimentary things. We used to have something called floppy disk, so there was an 8-inch floppy disk and a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and the storage capacity of the 8-inch floppy disk was zero point 0.9 MB, and of the 3.5-inch floppy disk was 1.44 MB. Now, by today's standards, all these things would appear to be of the cave age, right? But at that time, your entire program could come in these floppy disks. So your entire WordStar or entire Lotus 123 or entire DBase or Foxbase could come in these floppy disks, and that is what made these programs portable for us.
Yeah.
we
Even yeah. Even the hard disks they were in MBs, not in GBs.
Yes, 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 yes. In fact, when I went to a branch, I got a hard disk, which was of 20 GB, and that was considered to be the higher end hard disk at that time.
Hmm.
So that was a luxury that I got. So, but the point was, that I'll give you a very simple example of how technology started to shape my life and how technology started to bring about the efficiency in operations in bank. So we used to have something called telex. So how would one office communicate with another office? So let's say, how would a bank in India communicate with a bank in the UK or Germany? So there was a telecommunication mode called telex, right? And so how did you start the telex? So there was a dialer. So I don't know if you remember the old telephones that we had, where there was a
That
dial,
Tyler,
right?
Tyler.
You had to dial it, right?
Yeah.
So same way you had to dial the international number, and then the telex code had to be dialed, right? And once the connection was established, the machine would start making some sound, and then you knew that the connection had been established, and then you started to type. So you had to type in real time. So whatever you typed here was
Goes on.
printed at the other end. So that is how, this machine was also called the teleprinter. So it's at the other end, it got printed. And so if it was a short message, it was fine, but the moment the message was long, the problem was if the line got disconnected, you had to start typing all over again.
Mm.
And the challenge was, when you wanted to send long messages, I was in the international banking department of Baroda main branch at that time. And the long messages that we used to send were for the letters of credit, right? So as you would be aware that in case of, letters of credit is a very popular mode of buying and selling, right?
Mm.
So the buyer establishes a letter of credit on the seller, who's typically a foreign supplier, right? So, and letters of credit are drafted as per the international norms. So they tend to be pretty lengthy documents. And sending these documents through the telex mode, the conventional telex mode, was a very, very difficult task, right? So therefore, there was a technology upgrade that came at that time. It was called PC-based telex. So the advantage was
Right.
that now you could type the entire text in the PC, right? It was same in a word star, and then establish the line connection, and then
Mhm.
the message would be sent.
Correct. And you had the
But
ability
then,
to correct also there.
so therefore you did not have to type it in real time.
Real time.
Okay, but then the disadvantage, the way things were purchased and conceptualized at that time was that every LC was typed afresh. Now, what I observed, I was the officer dealing with imports at that time. So, what I observed was that most of the LCs were repetitive LCs.
Mm.
So, let us say there is an Asia Brown Bowery, just to take an example, right?
Mhm.
They had a factory in Baroda, and they were importing something from Switzerland or from Sweden, right? Now, most of their imports were of the same goods. And what would change from one LC to another LC was just either the quantity or the price at which it
Right.
was being imported, right? So only these two small changes. I said, if I could save this LC text in some way, then my next LC I could create in no time, because all that I had to do was simply edit the previous LC and create the next LC. So, simple thing like yeah, and I had to make an effort for that. Today people will not be able to realize it, but there was an effort that I had to make in convincing the management, please
Mm.
allow me to purchase floppy disk.
Mhm.
So they did finally allow me to purchase floppy disk. I saved those LCs on a floppy disk, and that enabled me to create the next LC
Excellent.
in matter of minutes. So
Minutes.
something, which used to take several hours of typing, and that too, it had to be reviewed again and again. Correct, because every time you type afresh, the chances of making mistakes, right? So those
Correct.
mistakes had to be corrected. Whereas in this case, you correct a mistake once, and every time you had to generate a new LC, it could be done in minutes. And as a result, what at the best times, we could have sent only one LC per day. Now we were able to send, couple of LCs in an hour.
Yeah.
And this improved our capacity to handle business, and as a result, the moment this word spread around that this branch of the bank is able to establish LCs within hours, you know, customers started to flock to us, and the business boomed like never before.
Correct.
And that is the first use of technology that I made for growing business. And then after that, of course, there were several such instances, where I used technology, simple solutions at that time, because we didn't have any of the complex kind of applications that you have today. Simple solutions, but they were very effective, and they had tremendous amount of impact on the business of the branch.
But that's good. I think one is like you use the technology, and second thing is like the out of box thinking. So like which has really like reduced the time, but because otherwise like every time you have to create a LC, create a mistake. In this example of yours, you just change the quantity and you just change the price and that's it. So this is incredible thought process. So the next question is like what key lessons of your time at SBI I mean, influence like your career?
So, one important thing which I always believed was that whenever you are faced with a problem, don't look at a solution which might be a traditional solution. So typically there are two things, which happen, or two reactions which happen when you are faced with a problem. One reaction is that, oh, it's there, what can we do? It has been there for ages. It is like this forever. So I said, no, that's not the way I will look at things. It might have been there for ages, but is there a better way of doing
Mm.
things? Can I do it it might be the simplest of solutions. It might be the silliest of solutions, but does it give me an edge over is it an improvement over what I was doing in the past? Does it save me those 5 minutes? Even if that process saves me 5 minutes as compared to what I was doing in the past, it's still something, which is worthwhile to do. And this kind of thinking, or this kind of problem solving use, and also use of technology to solve the problem. So when I became the branch manager of Java JNVFC complex branch, one of the, at that time, accounting was fully manual. So I don't know if any of you remember how banking was during those days when we had there used to be ledgers,
Mm.
and we had to write all
Right,
your
right.
transactions in ledgers, with a pen we had to write, and the balance had to be cast in our mind, and then it had to be written down there. And it was a stupendous task. I mean, our entire time was spent in housekeeping. And I was very lucky. I got a PC from my RM was very kind enough to give me a PC. I can never forget that, because it was a very difficult task. Getting a PC was a very, very difficult task at that time. But he gave me a PC, and I had this DBase program with me, and I computerized all the branch operations, the entire right from. So all that had to be done was just enter the voucher of the day in the system, and everything from the day book to the progressive to the subsidiary ledger to the general ledger, everything got generated. And that saved me a huge amount of time. Interest application. See,
Mhm.
interest application was something which was a massive exercise. Just imagine this thing. If you have thousands and thousands of accounts, each account, you have to compute interest manually. So what a tremendous amount of work it would be. Balancing of books,
Balancing up.
huge amount of work. So, all of this drudgery, entire drudgery of operations was taken away, which resulted in my being able to grow business at a pace that was uh, much faster than any other branch in the circle, right? And that's why, I could achieve performance of the branch, which finally got me the award for of Chairman's Club. I became member of the Chairman's Club because
Yeah,
of my
that
performance in Java GNVFC complex branch.
that
So,
that
these are some of the learnings which I had. And throughout my life, this is what I have done.
that's great. I mean, I think it's always you have been like, and as I said, like early, like thinking out of the box and then trying to do when you got a technology. So how to make a best use of that technology when you always figured out. So any pivotal moments or like the project that significantly impacted your growth at SBI, which you may want to call out.
Yes. See, let's say if I give you the example of the whole bank level, right? So
Mhm.
the examples that I had given you just now were at the branch level, right? But
Branch line,
let's look
yeah.
at the example at a whole branch level. I'll tell you the problem, and then I'll tell you the solution,
Okay.
right? So what was the problem? The problem was that earlier, we used to have these lease line connectivity to the branches,
Yeah.
right? Where the disadvantage was that if the line got disconnected, or if one of the so as if you look at the network topology, the one point, so there's a point of presence, and then from there it's connected to another point, and then from that point to another point, and so on and so forth. So typically in lease line, it follows a certain path, and if there is any breakage in any of the paths, then that branch would get isolated.
Mm.
So to overcome this problem, a solution was available called MPLS, multi-protocol layering system. So where the packets would get transmitted from whichever path was available. So suppose one of the paths got disconnected, the system would automatically reroute the packets to another path. Now, this was a project that I implemented. And when I'm saying implemented, means at that time we had State Bank of India branches plus our associate bank branches. If you remember, we had those State Bank of Hyderabad, State Bank of Mysore, State Bank of
Yeah,
Bikaner,
straight away though, yeah.
all those, right? So that whole group, so we implemented this, and it brought about a tremendous amount of stability to the network connectivity at the branches. Because by that time we had already rolled out CBS in all the branches.
Mhm.
But if you entered into a branch and the branch people told you, "Saab, aaj network nahi hai," then what would happen? I mean, the entire functioning of the branch would be
Functioning one.
stopped,
Sorry.
right? So this was problem number one, and so problem solution, right? But then it doesn't stop here. So all our network connectivity was taken from a single provider, which was BSNL, right? Because at that time, BSNL was the only network solution provider who had connectivity reaching up to the branches, that last mile
Last mile.
of connectivity. And SBI's 2/3 of the branches were in rural and semi-urban areas. So connectivity to these branches was very important. But all of these connectivities were wired connectivities.
Mhm.
Now, the disadvantage in wired connectivities, is that in India, especially because where the infrastructure, especially the road infrastructure, is not done in a very organized way. So road digging and all is something
Digging.
which happens very frequently. And what used to happen was that the moment a cable got cut, all the branches, which were served on that network line would get isolated.
Mhm.
And then whenever the network was, it could be restored only when the cable was restored. So I said that there is a need for having an alternative method of connecting branches, which would not be dependent upon the wired connectivity.
Wired connecting.
So, we started looking for solutions. And then we found that there was a technology called radio frequency, which could perhaps be used. Because, see, there were other service providers like Airtel, right? Or Tata, but then they could not provide you the last mile connectivity, because they said that getting that permissions for giving you that last mile wired connectivity was a hell of a difficult task. I mean, so therefore they said that if you want connectivity from us, you will have to move to RF. And that is what we did a pilot first for that, because people weren't convinced. All sorts of negative thoughts came in people's mind. Oh, if you go for wireless connectivity, somebody could spoof upon it. Somebody will be able to enter our network through this. So we had to do a lot of demos, lot of convincing to our information security department that no, this is a safe way of providing connectivity to branches. And that is what enabled us. When finally we did a pilot for that, then we did a POC, all of those things we did. And then gradually we started implementing it in branches. And then once, people got convinced of the utility of it, then we expanded it to all the branches. Now, all the branches have a dual mode of connectivity, right? And this dual mode of connectivity is something which provides a great deal of stability to the branches, and and the entire infrastructure which is available at the branches, which is run on this. So the important point here is that unless you if you get mired in the old school of thought thinking, this is the way things have been done in the past, and this is how it will happen in the future. No, can I find a different way of doing things? And if you start looking at it, if you start experimenting with it, right? So I'll give you another example. See, when we used to buy or implement a new application, along with the application, we had to implement the infrastructure also. So you got an application, then you also had to buy its own server, its own storage, all of that stuff, right? We said, why not set up our own private cloud? If we do that, we will be able to do this provisioning of infrastructure very quickly. And Yeah, we started it. I think we had used VMware's solution for that, right? It was a small setup that we did at that, to begin with, right? But that idea worked, and then gradually we started expanding upon it. In fact, I believe today, except for some of the very critical applications like core banking and I think the ATM switch and maybe the internet banking, all the rest of the applications of the bank now run on the private cloud, which is called Meghdoot.
Very good.
And the result of this has been not only has provisioning of infrastructure been made very simple and very quick, but also the efficiency of usage has gone up. So earlier, what used to happen was you typically provision for 5 years. So although you was just starting your application this year, and this year your consumption would be only 5% of your what you have projected for the fifth year, you would still end up buying the infrastructure for the fifth year, right? But this way, by having it on the cloud, the advantage was that you could start small.
Well,
You could provide only as much infrastructure as was required for the first year of usage, and then scale up as the transactions grew, right? So I mean, this is again something which helped the bank tremendously, and today it's one of the factors which is adding to the efficiency with which we are able to operate, right?
correct. So I think, I mean, yeah, what I hear is you are always like fostering the innovation and then exploring the
Yes.
new technology. You talked about like the cloud being introduced by you there, which has really given like begin with low infrastructure, and as you need, like you can scale up. And I think cloud also gives you elasticity of scaling up or scaling down on demand. Well, I think that is really like interesting thinking. I heard about like Meghdoot, and there were a lot of application SBI during your tenure, like they have deployed. So anything else you want to call when you were like DMD there, and DMD and CIO, which like that any other technological advancement which you may want to highlight here?
Yeah, of course, there are many, but as I said, that technology for the sake of technology doesn't serve any purpose, right? Technology has to serve a
Has to
business purpose. So if you are a
business.
business organization, it has to serve a business purpose. It has to give you a return on investment. This is a central theme that has been there throughout my career.
Mhm.
That if I'm making an investment of 100 rupees, I have to earn a decent return on this by deploying that technology, right? So let me give you an example. See, you are aware of ATMs, right?
Yeah.
And you are aware of the ATM card, and
Yeah.
you know that along with the ATM card, we used to issue something called an ATM pin.
Pin,
Now, the traditional way of doing this was that there was something called a pin mailer.
pin method,
And those of you who remember what that pin mailer was, it was a piece of paper.
paper,
It was a paper. It was not a simple paper. It was a double layered paper. There was a carbon inside,
carbon inside,
and when the it was printed on dot matrix,
dot matrix
and
printer.
when the printing of the pin was done on the top of it, the carbon inside would print the actual pin on the layer of paper which was below it, and these two were sealed so
Right.
that the persons who were printing the pin, they would not be able to see the
See,
pin. So only when the it was delivered to you in that envelope, and then you opened it, then you could see what was the pin. Just imagine what was the cost of doing this, the cost of stationery, the cost of printing, the cost of stuffing this in the envelopes, the cost of dispatching it, sending it through speed post or some other method of doing. I mean, all in all, it was costing not less than 100 rupees per pin.
one pin. And
Now,
magnitude of SBI, the volume.
and
I mean,
magnitude
nobody
of
has.
SBI,
Yeah,
right?
nobody has it.
I mean, crores of pins being sent
So,
every year, right? I said, can we shift this to simple digital pin?
mhm.
right? Or what was very nicely called at that time as green pin initiative.
Green pin initiative.
Right? Green pin initiative, because it did away with the paper-based generation of pin.
Yeah.
And I said, why not? I mean, I'm sending you the ATM card is coming to you through the registered post, right? Because it's a physical thing, right? So it has to come to you through physical, through registered post or through a courier. Card delivered to you. Now, if I send to you the pin through SMS, and I provide a secure way of ensuring that it is reaching you, so I'm sending it to you on the registered mobile number.
Mm-hmm.
Will it not be a simpler method of doing things?
Correct.
And will it not save it will enable the customer to start using his ATM card immediately? Because earlier what used to happen was you had to wait for the pin mailer to be received. So the
Correct.
ATM card and the pin mailer were sent in two different dispatches, right?
And
so
different
that
couriers also.
two
Different
different
couriers
couriers,
also. Yeah.
right? Can we do it digitally? And of course, we had to do a lot of convincing to with our security guys, but finally they did agree with it, and we did adopt a method of self-generation of PIN. Of course, at that time it was not through SMS; it was you had to go to the ATM and generate your own PIN, right? But nonetheless, it was still a digital way of paperless method of generating PIN, right? Now you just imagine. So suppose it was just 50 rupees. Let's say we got the advantage of bulk printing. It was 50 rupees per pin mailer, right? Versus 0 rupees now.
0.
And assume that every year we sent only 2 crore ATM cards.
Correct.
So 100 crore rupees that was being spent got reduced to 0 crore rupees.
0. And saving is a profit. Like
saving is a profit.
Huge
amount of efficiency built into the system. So whatever investment I would have made, those few tens of lakhs that would have gone into designing this system, right, was eminently recovered many times over in the very first year of deployment.
And I think you are taking the conservative number, because like looking at is one is like the issuing the new card. Another is like the people like me forgetting the PIN and again reapplying the things.
Yes.
Lost card, stolen cards. So I think that number would be much more than like, so saving would have been like the 2 times or 3 times of it in reality. Because lost card, stolen card, PIN forgotten, and then because like you punch 3-4 times, and that time you used to swallow the cards. These days, like there is just dip. So ATM used to swallow the card. So that was really a nightmare. So it's like anything I mean, I think you played a vital role in YONO, and then YONO was like really the first of its. You are like ahead of the curve compared to like the other PSU as well as the private sector bank. So anything you want to really like highlight here?
See,
the challenges
what does YONO stand for? YONO stands, it's an acronym for you only need one. And what was the thought process behind it? See, the thought process was that a person who needs financial solutions or solutions for his financial needs, he needs all those solutions. So you are not merely, because see, what was happening was that financial literacy was growing in the country. People were becoming more and more aware of the multiple type of financial options that are available to them.
Mm-hmm.
So the changes that had started to come into India with the advent of electronic trading on NSE, when NSE was established, right? So before that, you know that it was all ring trading. So when NSE was established, we went into electronic trading. Then after that, we came into the concept of demat accounts and all that. And that is what really gave the boost to the stock market. And along with that came the mutual funds. So good old days, we had only something called the Unit Trust of India. So if you wanted to do anything, you had to buy units of Unit Trust of India, and that was about all. Then mutual funds came. And then, of course, insurance industry. Insurance was there earlier also, but then it expanded in a big way, right? With the advent of new players that came into the market post-liberalization, the insurance industry also expanded. And the awareness of people about all these financial products also grew. So we said that, look, now the app that we provide, the mobile banking app that we provide, it should not be merely an app that gives you access to your bank accounts, because that is something which is now given for granted or taken for granted by the customer. That you will have core banking, you will have an internet banking, you will have a mobile banking. I mean, those
Mobile.
things are given. And smartphones had already started to become very popular right at that time. And from the figures that we got, we found that the usage of smartphone or the growth of smartphones is outpacing the growth of feature phones, right? So we said that this is the right time that we should focus upon the apps. So we said that can we have a single app for all your financial requirements or all your financial needs? So not only banking, but can I make it a financial superstore? So can I add insurance to it? Can I add mutual funds to it? Can I add credit card to it? Can I add all these other subsidiary needs, financial needs that you have into a single app, so that you do not have to go into multiple apps? Because one of the things that we found was that there was a reluctance on part of the people to download multiple apps. So if there was a single app which provided you with all these solutions, so if I give you another example, let's look at the Amazon app, right? You can buy everything from grocery to whatever else. I mean, hardware, anything and everything that you want to buy, you can buy on Amazon. So you do not have to separate even medicines, so, I mean, generic medicines. So you do not have to go and download those individual apps if you wanted to buy those different products, right? So similarly, for financial needs also, can we have a financial superstore? And of course, the added to this was the idea of a marketplace, right? So since you have come into the app, can I have tie-ups with various other marketplaces, right? Online sellers, and maybe give you some sort of an incentive to go via this app into those apps. Of course, those services were not built to, those services were still on the platforms of those e-retailers. But could we shift to those or transition to those apps via the Yono app, or open those pages of those apps via the Yono? So if you wanted to book a ticket, let's say railway ticket, so earlier what you did was you went to the IRCTC website, right, and bought the ticket there. Here we would transition you to the IRCTC website, and then you did your transaction there. The advantage again was that one single interface, and through that interface, all your financial needs you got through this. And of course, there were certain other innovations, which came later on, which were not originally envisaged, but which tremendously enhanced the utility of the app. So I'll just quote one example of this. So you're aware that lending was traditionally a apply on paper based system, right? So if you wanted a loan, even if you wanted the simplest kind of a loan, you had to go to the branch of the bank,
fill
up an application form. That application form would be processed, the loan would be sanctioned, and then your own account would be opened, and then the disbursement would be made from that loan account. We said, can we digitize this process? So the thought was that we had a category of loans called personal loans, right? So we said that, can we give personal loans fully digitally, end-to-end digitally? So you apply on the app, and the rest of the processes all happen behind it, and you get the loan credited into your account. No paper application. So we came out with this idea of pre-approved personal loans. Of course, in this pre-approved personal loans, how did we get the data? Because after all, to whom do you lend? I mean, you can't do it to anyone. So that is where, that was our very first use, I would say, a very successful business use of AI ML. Because we had massive amount of data, 45 crore customers, 50 crore accounts, so the transaction data that we had was huge. But then that transaction data itself was not useful unless you made sense out of that data.
Makes sense.
Drew the right inferences out of that data. So we said that, can we use AI ML? Can we develop models, which will tell us who is a good customer to lend or who is a safe customer to lend online. Because see, we were looking at a methodology of lending where we did not interact with the customer. Right? It was completely non-face to face. So we said that we have got to be damn sure that the customer to whom we are lending is the right person and we will not have any defaults, because this loan was without any collateral, right? So it was a completely security-less loan. And so therefore, what we did was we deployed the model, we culled out data, and we said that to this group of customers, we will make loan offering through our YONO app. And this was called the pre-approved personal loan. So we decided that who was good for what amount. So let's say Prasad Likhite was good for, let us, at that time, I think when we started it, the limit was only 50,000 rupees, right? So let's say he was good for 50,000. So the moment he would open the app, he would say, you are eligible for a personal loan of 50,000 rupees. Would you like to apply? And then the only piece of information that we took from you was A, the amount of loan. So if you wanted to apply for less amount, 50,000 was the limit, but if you wanted to apply for less, you could apply for less. So you could change the amount. And this loan was typically for a duration of 36 months. But if you wanted to repay it in less time, you could do it. So you could change that 36 months to, let us say, 24 months or 12 months, depending upon you. With you, if you wanted to change, you changed, submit. The rest of the processes got completed in 90 seconds flat.
Wow.
See, the assessment had already been done. So all that we had to do was open the loan account in core banking, set up the limits, set up the what is called the DP, the drawing power, make the disbursement into your savings account, and then set up the EMI. These processes we orchestrated at the back end, and we ensured that your savings account got credited with the amount of personal loan in 90 seconds flat. Very fortunately for us, we had developed this process before COVID. And it came in very, very handy during COVID. Right? Because at that time, during COVID, there were people who were needing money. They're sitting at home, they're needing money, and they couldn't go to the branches. And this was something, which enabled them to get money sitting in the comfort of their home or in the isolation of their homes at that time, as we would have called it. And also not only doing it from home, but doing it 24/7. That was the other advantage. So whether it was Sunday, holiday, Saturday, whatever, you could still apply and get a loan.
Yeah. In fact, that was my next question. So, like, how did you tackle COVID-19 pandemic situation? But at least I think you rightly pointed. I mean, you thought ahead of the time, like, and it was like right spot on. Like when COVID situation came, I mean, they could get the loan in 90 seconds and that too 24/7, and irrespective whether it is a Saturday or Sunday. I mean, that was really incredible.
Yeah, and then I'll give you one more example, how what helped us in tackling the COVID problem. So, one of the businesses that we did was that it was the business of giving out pensions, right? So the largest pensioner base is with SBI. Right? And the rules require that every pensioner submit to the bank something called a life certificate. So life certificate is basically to tell that the pensioner is alive. So in the month of October or November every year, the pensioner has to go to the branch and fill up a form and then sign it in front of the branch manager, which was a proof that the pensioner was alive. And on the basis of that, the pension would be continued for the next 1 year. We said, can we digitize this process? Right? Why should the pensioner have to come to the branch? And we introduced a process called video life certificate. So instead of the pensioner having to come to the branch, he would simply click on a link on the pension app, right? And then that would start a video. And it was not a real-time conversation with the person. It was a recording of the video interaction. And what we did was, just in order to ensure that the pensioner was alive. Of course, the as far as matching of the face is concerned, there again we used facial recognition technology at the back end to ensure that the face of the person matched
Match.
with the image that we had on record. But the routing pharmacists were always there. They would say that, how do you know? Somebody would just put a photograph in front of the camera, and then system would still treat it as the person's image, right? And say that the person was there in front of the camera. So we said that what we will do is, we will ask certain questions
Mhm.
on the screen, to which the person would have to reply. And these questions would be very, very simple questions.
Mhm.
But then they would be picked up randomly from a question bank, and then they would be thrown to you. Say, for instance, what is the year of your birth? Now, questions to which the persons would know the answer.
Mhm.
But when thrown up randomly, right, only the real person, a live person,
Real
would be
person.
able to respond in a very short time. The year of your birth, the place of your birth, right, your mother's maiden
Mother's
name,
maiden name.
right. All these are things, which you do not forget till the very end of your life, right. Which branch did you join in? These are the things that we ask. And that video was about a 30-second video that we recorded.
Mhm.
That video was, of course, for the sake of good order, that video was reviewed at the back end by an officer, just to ensure that everything was in order and nothing was amiss. But then it saved a huge number of pensioners the botheration of going to the branch
Going to the
and
branch.
giving their life certificate.
And
So
I
again,
can, yeah, I can tell you,
use of
like my
technology
father is
to
87-year-old, and now like he has like the pension account with like another PSU bank, whether he has to, even today he has to go and I mean be present like physically. And then at times like he travel, like I mean we live together in Thane, but like at times like he visits like my sister's place. So during that time, that October or November is the time where they need to go and visit the branch. But I think this is incredible feature which you have added, and even as of 2024 he has to go there. I mean this is, I mean I would say like the personal perspective. I mean, this is incredible feature that you have added at SBI.
and one of the things that we did, and because why I want to mention this is, see, many times, people think that you are in public sector, and in public sector you are bound by the government rules. There is something called the Central Vigilance Commission, the CVC, who have
Mm.
got very strict guidelines on what you can procure, how you can procure, and all of those stuff. And therefore, your hands are all tied. There is not much innovation you can do. There is not much lateral thinking that you can do, right. You cannot bring about innovation. But we did establish a whole department for innovation and startups. Now, the challenge that we had here was that, see, the procurement process in public sector banks said, thou shall procure through an open RFP,
Mm.
which means you had to publish that RFP. Anybody could apply through it, and then they would get selected on the basis of either L1 or TC1. Now, no startup could come through this process.
Mm.
So we said that if we want to bring in the innovations which only
Innovation.
startups can bring in, right, the agility which startups can bring in, we will have to tweak our policy. And we did tweak our policy. We wrote down a completely new policy for startups, startup engagement. It was called the startup engagement policy.
Mhm.
Through which, and we said that all the norms which were prescribed for normal procurements shall not be applicable to procurements through startups. So all of those were given a deviation, and we established a new policy. We said that but there will be transparency in the process, because that is, as a public sector, we are required to do that. There'll be a transparency in A, selecting the technology, and B, in discovering the price or negotiating the price. And very happy to tell you that there were a number of people, who did get engaged with us there. I'll not name the startup, but I still remember those two boys. It was a startup which was started by two IITians, and very young boys. They used to come and meet us with their laptop bags slung on their shoulders. And today they have become one of the most successful startups, a unicorn, you know, very happy to see that, you know. So it was
Correct.
something, it was a very simple, I'll tell you the problem that we were facing and the solution that they got for us. So, you know, these documents, so you had some, you used to, we got so many documents from people, right? Account opening forms, along with the account opening form, your proof of address, proof of identity, God knows what,
Mm.
how many documents you need for multiple purposes, right? And the challenge was that these documents, so at one point we decided that we will digitize these documents. You know, maintaining these in physical copies and accessing them was a hell of a task. We digitized these documents. What it meant was, scanning was of course required, right? But then unless you classified this properly, I mean, what was a proof of identity, what was a proof of address, and within those proof of identity and proof of what kind of document it was, whether it was a driving license, whether it was a passport, whether it was
And
voter ID, right, PAN card, what was it? And then, you know, there was a quality of data issue also, you know, that was always there, because data was fed manually, and then so there was something which the teller would feed, and then there's something else in the document and all this. We said that, look, can you give us a solution by which, when we scan the document, you employ an OCR or ICR technology, it will read the document, and by reading the document, it will tell us what kind of document it is. So the document classification will happen
classification and extraction.
and extraction. It will also extract the content from the document, and then, you know, it will do a matching. So if the date of birth of Prasad fed by the teller was X, and we
X.
found that the date of birth in the PAN card or in the Aadhaar card was Y, you know, it would immediately throw this up as an error, saying that you have fed one date of birth there and another date of birth exists in his documents, right? Or if the address fed there and the address fed here, there was a mismatch, right?
Mismatch.
Then it would again tell. Or for instance, a name and other things. So, and they started working on it, and then they did perfect that technology tremendously. You know. Subsequently, of course, now is in an even better shape than it was at that time. But this helped us hugely in digitizing our documents. I mean, imagine a bank, you know, which opens several crore accounts every year,
Yeah.
and for them to be able to store all their documents in a proper format and in a proper way that were later on easy to access, and improve the quality of their data, you know, in this process, was a big leap forward, you know?
Yeah, then
So
it's a mammoth task, and then on top of that, Aadhaar masking. So as per the RBI, so
yes,
you have to extract the Aadhaar and mask the Aadhaar and then feed it.
correct, correct, absolutely, you know. So these were some of the tasks, and which something, you know, which they helped us in doing. And the advantage of engaging startups or engaging with a startup was that they did it very fast. I mean,
Mm.
had it been with any of the conventional technology
Conventional.
service providers,
It
I
would
mean,
take
they would have
time.
taken several months or years. You know, as these
Correct.
guys took only weeks to do this.
Yeah. And I think that's what like the beauty, I think what you said rightly, like that fintech engagement where it has given you that agility and time to market is keen because like when it is said, like if you don't take care of the customer, somebody else will. So, and I think with your thought leadership and you are like the ahead of the curve and that too being like a public sector bank, I mean, it's not like the private where like you are abide with the rules and all. And I think this is something really incredible. So, I mean, now like this is a personal question, like where like, I mean, what career achievement like which you are like the proud of and why? Like, what is that like something which you are really like the proud of?
Uh, difficult question to answer.
No, I know
Right?
there are so many, it's so many. It's
No, the
like
one thing
asking
that I'm
mother like
proud
which
of,
one? Yeah,
yeah, so one thing that I'm proud of was that I, you know, sometimes when I look behind what I did, and where all I use technology to solve problems, not only for the bank, you know, but also it benefited the customers immensely. It improved the customer satisfaction immensely. I gave you the example of digital life certificate. I gave you the example of green pin, right? You know, small things, but they have had an impact on
impact.
the life of the customer. See, I was also part of the group, which were involved in the implementation of UPI in the initial period when the concept was being developed. You know? And so one of the things that we had very strongly focused upon and worked upon was the reconciliation piece and the customer complaint piece. That tomorrow, if because it was a four-party model, right? And so there was a there could have been a PSP app provider, a third-party app provider, TPAP, who was not a bank, right? So all your Google Pay, Phone Pay, these kind of people. So how would if there was a problem, how would those problems be addressed? So all those forward-looking thinking we did in 2015, when this whole design process was being done, and which helped tremendously subsequently when it was put into process. Similarly, the concept of UPI Lite. I was traveling in a train to Jabalpur, and I bought something on the train, and I wanted to pay using UPI, but there was no connectivity in the train. So I said that can we have a method, by which we can make an offline payment in UPI for a small amount, right? Maybe I think probably I bought a cup of tea or something. Can we make a small amount payment using offline payment, so where there is no connectivity, still the payment could happen, because I believe that is something which would help in making assured payments even in situations where you did not have connectivity. And this is again something which we do not realize in cities where perhaps connectivity is very stable, but the moment you go to the countryside, you find that connectivity does become a problem, and there small purchases also this. So these are the kind of contributions, all based upon the use of technology to solve one or the other problem, or the use of technology to bring about some solution, give you some service, which was hitherto not there, which made your life simpler. So those are the things, which today, when I look back upon my career, I find that those are the things which give me a tremendous amount of satisfaction. That okay, I have also been able to make some contribution to this world, some contribution to the banking space, taken it a little bit forward, made the life of the customers a little bit easier or simpler.
Absolutely. And I think it's much appreciated. I mean, I could just tell you, like, out of my experience about that pension stuff, like my father, he has to go. So here, like, with you have like so much of the rich experience in like in IT and banking. What advice you would like to give to the young generation IT and banking professions?
Right. So, one thing which I keep emphasizing, and I keep telling all the youngsters, that see, there are two things that can happen. One is that either there is a problem and you want to use a new solution for resolving that problem, right? So this is one way in which you could use technology. The other way in which you could use technology is to bring about an entirely new solution, right? Something which was not there hitherto, but you brought about, right? And but either ways, you need to solve a real life problem. So don't only invest in technology for the sake of technology. So many of the CEOs, they tell me, oh, we are investing heavily into AI ML. I said, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that you're investing heavily into. But what is the business outcome that you're looking? So I always keep telling people, focus upon the business outcome and find out, am I solving a real life business problem? Or am I bringing about a solution or a service, developing a solution or a service, which will enhance the customer satisfaction? So let me give you a very simple example. So when television first started in India, at that time, we had only one channel, that was Doordarshan, right? So there was no need, there was a single black and white TV, single. There was nothing called a remote. And so there was no need of a remote at that time. But when more and more channels came, when liberalization happened and more channels came, and this concept of remote came.
Mm.
Now, see, before that, remote was not needed because you did not have to
Switch the
change any
channels.
channel. There was only a single channel. But the moment there were multiple channels, the remote gave you. See, I don't think that today most of the people would have forgotten how to change a channel by going to the TV set and
Yeah.
changing from the buttons, right? Although there is every TV set has that buttons still behind it, right, or at the bottom. But most people wouldn't know where it is because we have got so used to using
Yes.
the remote, and the remote has helped us tremendously because there's a real life business problem which multiple channels has brought in, and you are not only able to change channels but increase the volume, decrease the volume, and all sorts of things you can do. So use technology for addressing an issue, or addressing a problem, or addressing problem that might have cropped up because of other advancements that have happened. So today, for instance, when you talk about AI ML, so I gave you the example of pre-approved personal loan. So what is the benefit that we got from there? So or what are the challenge that we were facing? Huge amount of data. And so in fact, that model that we built had some 150 features into it, which enabled us to find out. And analyzing on 150 features in a traditional way would have been a near impossibility.
Yeah.
And then, using machine learning in order to further improve upon it as to which of the features, actually result in better prediction of the lendability to the borrower. All those things would not have been possible without the use of technology. And
Yeah.
so today, you have this opportunity of using technology to solve migrate problems far more efficiently and in a far better way than any time in the past. And that is what I would suggest that people should focus upon. In fact, as we evolve upon lending, and as lending becomes, because banking has two major aspects, one is taking of deposits and the other
It
is
was
giving of loans,
lending.
right? Now, taking of deposits is typically the easier task, right? It's the giving of loans which is the more difficult task. There, as we start using more and more data, right? So earlier, what were you focusing upon? Let's say you were focusing only upon analysis of financial statements.
Mhm.
So they gave you the balance sheet, the profit and loss statement, and you analyzed it, say for the last 3 years, if it was a existing company, and then you made predictions for the next 2 years, and then use those figures for making your loan proposal. Now, today you have access to myriad other sources of data. You have data on the newspaper e-newspaper channels, right? You have data on blogs, data coming from blogs. You have data from social media. You have data coming from the various TV channels, right? Which again, I think has still not been tapped to the extent that it should have been tapped, but it can be tapped very efficiently if you have that voice to text translation. So
Text
all that you need
conversion.
to do is just just listen to all the TV channels, all the business channels, right? Convert it into text and then see how the how you can make use of this data. See all these alternative sources of data which hitherto were not available. So, and they are very, very important. See, even today, a good amount of lending in this country happens through the channel of the Sahukar,
Mhm.
or Mahajan, as he's called in different parts of the country, the local money lender. And the local money lender, what does he lend upon? He looks at the face of the potential borrower, and he looks at the antecedents of the potential borrower. उसका बाप क्या करता था, चाचा क्या करता था, मामा क्या करता था, what company does he keep, the friend circle that he keeps and all this. And based upon that, he takes that call. Is he worthy of being lent the money or not? He takes into consideration those myriad other sources of information which tell about the intentions of the borrower, right? Not only the figures, not only
Mhm.
his salary, not only his capacity of earning, but intention of the borrower. Today you can find about all these things through social media. analytics of social media. And
social
why
media.
I'm saying you need to use AI ML for this, because the amount of data that you are getting from these sources is humongous. And making sense of that, drawing meaningful inferences from that, is something which is very, very important. And if you can do it properly, then you can get a very effective way of underwriting your loan,
Yeah, and I
which
think
I
this is,
believe.
yeah, this is very valid point. When nowadays, like it is said, data is oil, and then what kind of the sense like you want to make out of the data? I mean, that's really, I mean, a valid point you mentioned here. So next is like, what are like the industry trends or I mean, emerging trends in banking or technology that excites you, and then how they will shape up the future, as per you?
Right. So, I explain to you this by way of example.
Correct.
So, you know that UPI started sometime in 2016, I think April 2016. And at that time, all the apps that had come into the market, those are all bank-led apps, right? So, I think we had our Buddy at that time, and others had different apps. ICICI had, I think, Pockets, and different banks had different apps, and the market was dominated by apps. So UPI through apps. Today, what is the situation? Today, if you look at the statistics, 98% of the transactions are happening via third-party application provider. And the top three who contribute 96% of the transactions are PhonePe, Google Pay, and Paytm.
Okay.
Now, Google Pay and PhonePe are not banks. Paytm was a bank, now it's not a bank, right? But their being a bank did not contribute to this. It was the innovation that they brought in that contributed. See, something where the banks had an edge, it was taken over by
Third
other
party.
service providers.
Yeah.
So, this again is something which is very important from another perspective. People ask me, which is the best technology to use? I said, don't forget about the best technology to use. What is more important than the technology is what use you make of the technology.
Mm.
That will make the difference.
Correct.
See, everybody has access to the same technology, So
Correct.
most of your applications are written in Java. So that differentiation will not happen. The differentiation will happen in the business process flows that you may draw using these technologies, and how convenient they are from the
Correct.
customer's perspective.
Correct.
See, the customer is today looking at something which is making his life simpler. I gave you the example of TV remote. Just made your life simpler. That's all. Otherwise, the same function you can do on the TV also.
Correct. It's a customer experience like that matters.
The customer experience. I'll give you another example, right? Again, I keep giving this example to people, who talk about which technology I should invest in. I said, look, just look at few years back when the share market got digitized and when DMATs started coming in. Again, the initial digital broking or online broking, that time banks also forayed into it. Today you will find that the entire market is dominated by non-bank brokers, whether it is a Grow, whether it is a Zerodha, whether it is Angel One. All of these are dominating the market of online stock broking. Where have the banks gone? Banks were the ones, who entered into this fray in the initial phase. But today, all of them have got relegated into the background. Except, I think, maybe if you look at the top 10, I think it's just Kotak and ICICI, there are only two folks remaining. Rest all are non-bank players. Why? Because it is these non-bank players that have made use of the technology. They have understood the customer experience. They have always said, look, whatever I do, I shall always keep the customer in mind. If it is one click less, damn it, I shall do it. Because that one click less makes his life simpler.
Correct.
So I give you an example, the Google, these apps that you have, UPI apps that you have, now you have many options behind. So you could link many accounts to your UPI ID,
UPI.
right? Now, suppose you have got two accounts. One, say you got an account in ICICI Bank, another you have in SBI. Now, suppose the SBI account for some reason is not accessible. Bank is down or something is wrong with their UPI application. The system will tell you when you are making that payment, and suppose your SBI was your primary account.
Okay.
The moment you go to make that payment, the system will tell you SBI is maybe not responsive at this time. Would you like to make payment out of your ICICI Bank?
I see. Okay.
See, it does not wait for you to proceed
Proceed
fail
and
the
fail.
transaction, then change again, scan the QR code, again go into the this thing. No, it proactively tells you
Details.
that there is a problem with the with that bank. So, would you like to pay with the other bank where you have an account? Or for that matter, now that we have RuPay credit card as one of the options in UPI. And suppose the merchant does not take RuPay credit card. There are some merchants who don't take RuPay credit through UPI. The system automatically tells you this merchant does not take RuPay credit card. So system automatically does not show the option of RuPay credit card when you want to make this payment.
Oh.
Usually saves you the botheration of a failure in the transaction. Then you try to array kyun fail ho gaya, then again go into and make the payment out of your bank account.
Yeah, man, that's brilliant. I mean, I think that's exactly as you said rightly, like the proactive approach that matters and really wins the customer experience and then the customer trustworthiness. Like
yes, tremendous. See, I'll give you an example. People say UPI has been a great success. It has tremendous success, no doubt on that. It's in fact, we are the number one. India is number one in digital payments. It's because of UPI and because of the way the UPI. But very few people know that the major contribution or contributor to the success of UPI was not UPI as it was originally designed, but a concept called the sound box. Right?
Yeah.
See, what was the problem that was faced before that, before the sound box was introduced? The problem was, while you made the payment, while the buyer was assured that he had made the payment, the seller, that is the merchant, he would not know whether the payment had been made or not. So, expecting him to go into his app and then seeing whether that payment had come or not was not something which he could have done if you were a Kirana store operator. How would you be going into your app and seeing whether the payment came or not? It was that sound box which gave you an audio clue that the payment had been made. And that is what gave you that assurance. See, because what had happened by that time was that many people, they had started taking screenshots of the payment. And to the merchant, they would show, uncle, payment ho gaya, ye dekhiye screenshot. They would just show their mobile, and the poor fellow, the merchant, wouldn't know whether that this was a screenshot that he was just showing, and actually not make the payment. This kind of misdemeanor was happening on part of many of the payers, and that is why merchants had started becoming wary of taking UPI. But because of the introduction of the sound box, see, they say that it is Vijay Shekhar Sharma who got this idea. Maybe he did. I think the first sound box that came into India was perhaps that of Paytm, right? But it was a brilliant idea. It did solve the huge problem. And look, he looked at the problem not from the payer side. He looked at the problem from the receiver
side of merchants.
Merchant side. See, when typically you design systems and all, you always you are looking customer centricity, consumer centricity. When you talk about customer centricity, always everybody looked at it from the payer side. Nobody ever thought of receiver was there a problem that was being faced at the acceptor level.
Correct. I think this is really a good example which you pointed out. So coming to the next thing is where do you see the Indian BFSI next 5 to 10 years down the line? As you said, we are really ahead in terms of the UPI digital payment. If I look into the statistics, India is the way up ahead of like the other. I think Pix is the second, which comes in the real-time payment, and they are almost like the 40% of the transactions what India does. But apart from the UPI, I mean, where we are leading, we as a BFSI, where do you see, I mean, this industry in the next 5 to 10 years down the line?
See, the way I look at it is that in the years to come, there will be convergence of data that will happen. See, today, huge amount of data is available, but that data is typically in silos. So I'll give you examples. The very meaningful data is available on you, on your income tax returns. If you are a merchant on your, or if you're in the manufacturing space, you are on your GST returns. There's a huge amount of data that is there in your account statement itself. If I can converge all this into one place, then the amount of insight that I can draw from this will be many, many times of what I can draw when I look at these data in silos. So one of the things which I believe will happen is convergence of data. It has already started, right? Say, for instance, through the account aggregation, right? The account already now digitally you can provide your account statement to the bank from where you are intending to take a loan, and that bank can analyze your account statement again using technology in no time to find out how your transactions have behaved over the past whatever period that statement is of. Similarly, it will be possible, and I believe, I do not know, today the GST Council is meeting. So they were to take a decision on this, whether to make GST data available to others to use, right? Last time they had said no, but I believe that now there is a thought process among them, among the members of the GST Council, that with some safeguards, that data should be made available for. And the best thing that has happened in this case is that a lot of fintechs have come into this space. As I gave you the example of UPI apps, I gave you the example of stockbroking apps, and I've shown to you that in both of this, the leaders are the fintechs, not the banks. Here also, making use of this data and making sensible use of this data. It's finally, it's not the data that matters. It is the inference that you draw from the data that matters. So what kind of inferences I draw from this, and how I make use of this myriad sources or disparate sources. Today you find that these sources, what is the relationship between them? But I'll give you an example of how we can build something for the future. Say, for instance, you take the case of agricultural lending, and every year you have problems of crop failures, farmers committing suicides. Then when the elections come, there are mass farm loan waivers, all of these things happen. But what is the problem that the farmer is facing? The problem he is facing is that due to certain natural calamities, his crop might fail. And that is the time, when he needs a relief. But then, if we can make this relief a focused relief, then that is something, which will enable us to help these farmers tremendously. Now, who are the people who are holding the data? A, the bank itself, which has done the lending. B, whether the calamity has occurred or not is something, which our IMD knows. So whether there was excess rainfall in that region, whether there was lack of rainfall in that region, or if there was a pestilence in that region. Today's satellite imagery enables you to find out if there was pestilence in a particular area. Pestilence means infection by pest, right? Whether that has happened. So any adverse event that has happened in that area, it is today possible. So you saw the photographs of the tragedy that happened in Kerala, the massive landslides that happened in Kerala. So what is it that the system did? You got the images before the tragedy, and the image after the tragedy. Just compare these two images and you can instantly find out the extent of damage. How many houses got buried? And all of that, all the structures got, because the image prior to the
Prior to that.
landslide gave you a clear idea about what all assets were there, houses were there, electrical installations were there, petrol pumps were there, or whatever else, hospitals, schools, whatever else was there. All of those objects were available to you in the image. And post that, you can now instantly figure
Compare.
out what is the extent of damage. This same thing in the manual process requires a survey of at least 3 months. So
Yeah.
there'll be a survey team that will be formed. That team will physically go to that place. They will wait for the mud to be excavated out. Then they will find out the extent of damage. It is possible to find this out within matter of hours. This is
Yeah.
the kind of use of technology that we should be able to make. Imagine if there is a problem with a particular village or farms in a particular geographical area, and we are immediately able to find out, oh, there was a hailstorm in that area, and that hailstorm, we can also find out the intensity of that hailstorm, and that hailstorm had this level of intensity, and at this level of intensity it would lead to this level of damages. This information now gets immediately conveyed to the insurance company, and the insurance company automatically makes the assessment based upon this information and decides to make the payment for the insurance claim. And that insurance claim is credited into the account of the farmer, the Kisan credit card account of the farmer in the bank, and the farmer again becomes eligible for taking a fresh advance. Something which today happens in several
So,
weeks at the fastest pace, if not in several months.
yeah.
And the efficiency of it will improve tremendously. The accuracy of it will improve tremendously. See, this is what I believe will happen in the days to come. Myriad sources of data, people will find out ways of converging this and then drawing inferences based upon relationships between these pieces of data.
Yeah.
It is these relationships, which will enable them to draw newer inferences that hitherto had not been imagined. And that is what will result in either improvement in efficiency or the ability to come up with new products and services, which will help tremendously in making our transactions more seamless, more effortless, and overall reducing the cycle of business. So the faster the business cycle, the more is your GDP
More.
growth. And that is
And I
what
think,
we.
yeah, and I think with the help of the hyper automation, Gen AI, AI/ML, all those technologies, definitely at least it will like the complement whatever you said, like you gave the example of Kerala and all. So analyzing those patterns and then making it decision making quite faster. You talked about like those loans, the unstructured loans, where like you compare those various sources and then issue the instant loans and all. And I think you definitely like made those like valid point. And I mean, Indian banking industry is like using those kind of the technologies. And I'm sure, like, I think coming next 5, 10 years, definitely we will keep that, like, we will lead the frontier compared to like the other countries. UPI is like the classic example, and matter of time, like some other areas also, like, Indian banking will lead globally. So I think anything else you want to, before we close, you want to highlight?
Oh, I just want to leave this message with all my younger friends. Look at the history of humankind from the 17th century upwards. See, most of what you use today was either discovered or invented in the last 3.5 centuries. And many of us do not realize this. But most of it was actually discovered in an era when there were no computers. So whether it was electricity, the greatest the thing which had the greatest impact upon humankind was the invention of the steam engine. Because it was the steam engine that gave you the power that was hitherto unfathomable. And how did the concept develop? There was a boy. He was sitting in the kitchen. His grandmother was cooking, and there was a kettle kept on the burner. And when the water started to boil, the lid of the kettle started moving up and down.
Up and down.
So this boy, James Watt, he asked his grandmother, Grandma, why is the lid moving up and down? Is there something inside it? Grandma said, no, 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 there's nothing inside it. There's just water. Young boy, focus upon your breakfast. But not James. He said, there has to be something which is making that lid move up and down. And that is where the concept of this power of steam and what it could do. And of course, later on, as his thoughts matured, what was a reciprocating motion, he converted it into a rotatory motion. And that's how we got the steam engine. And then, of course, the rest of the industrial revolution is all history. Anything else, anything else. I'll give you an example from the medical field. So today, one of the greatest successes, we have all gone through this COVID. And we know that what saved most of us was the COVID vaccination, or what enabled the humankind to actually reduce or control the epidemic was or pandemic was the vaccine, right? But you see, the invention of vaccine. So there was a British physician by the name of Edward Jenner. And what was the observation that he had made? So, during those days, there was a disease called smallpox. It was prevalent, when I was a child. Fortunately, during your time, it would have been banished from the face of the earth. But during our childhood, smallpox was still there. Every year, we used to get vaccinated for smallpox. And it was a deadly disease. Either it would kill you, or it left marks on your face or your body, because of those warts that were formed. So what was that observation which Edward Jenner made? He found that the cow maids in his village, for some reason, they did not have smallpox. So cow maids were those ladies, who would milk the cows. But what he observed was, and of course, as the story goes, the what everybody knew about them was that the cow maids were more beautiful than other ladies, right? Because they were never infected by smallpox. But why? See, he went into the depth of why did they not get infected with cowpox or with smallpox? Because he found that they were getting infected with another disease called cowpox. And that cowpox, it was a benign disease. It just resulted in a few rashes on your skin, and after that it went away. But all those people who got infected with cowpox, they did not have the smallpox infection. And then he decided to test it out. He took the cowpox warts, dried them, and he blew them into the nose of one of his servants, just to test whether he would get infected with smallpox. And he found that he did not get infected with smallpox. And that is how the whole concept of vaccines got developed. See, an observation, that observation which thousands of other people would have made, that cow maids do not get infected with smallpox. Thousands of people would have made. But this relationship, drawing this relationship, get infected with cowpox, do not get infected with smallpox. This relationship only Edward Jenner could make. It is this ability of the human mind to draw relationship between seemingly unrelated things is what has resulted in the progress of mankind. Remember the simple harmonic motion? Galileo What was
Yes,
Galileo? How did he discover it? He went to a church. He found that there was a lamp. That lamp was swaying.
swing
And what he did was he counted the timing of the
time.
swaying. He did not have a watch. He just counted it using his pulse.
Mm.
And he found that the period, that is the time it took to sway from one end to the other, was dependent only upon the length of the pendulum and not upon anything else.
Mhm.
What we call the simple harmonic motion.
Simple harmony.
What was Galileo's ability? The Galileo's ability was to relate the motion of the lamp with the time it took for the motion to be completed.
Motion to
I mean, millions of people would have seen lamps moving in the church before him, but nobody was able to draw that relationship. It is this ability to draw relationship between seemingly unrelated things, that gives us new insights. And it is these new insights is what results in new progress.
new.
My belief is that in the days to come, it is these new insights, it is these new ways of using data, new ways of correlating this data, new ways of drawing inferences, faster inferences. Today AI ML enables you to do faster inferences. That will speed up the progress of mankind like never before. And I do hope very fervently that this will help us in improving the quality of our life. See, at the end of it, we all do everything for the sake of quality of human life.
Quality.
So if the quality of human life is not impacted, then whatever we have done is not very meaningful. But I believe that the quality of human life will be impacted and will be impacted for the better. And that is what. The only contribution that I can make now that I'm not in the active service, the contribution that I can make is that I can always engage with people who are into this field. In fact, I do it also currently. I share my domain knowledge with them. I tell them about how things work in the field of financial accounting, which many of our young friends in the fintech space do not know. Right. So I give them those inputs, and I sort of become a bouncing point for their ideas. So, and I'm very happy to do that role. I believe that days to come, this is something which will help the country tremendously.
And I think with your so vast and exhaustive experience, and then the things you have articulated, I think there are too many things like, it's like your ideas, your mind is like the ocean. So like even if we get like few buckets out of it, it's going to be like the tremendous for us. For us, and then the new IT professional, the new fintech companies, the things to learn out of your such a vast experience. So we are also looking forward to be in touch with you and then see like as you said, like to the humankind, and then getting the information and making the relevance of it, creating some meaningful output out of that information. So definitely, I think we'll be keen to see and collaborate with you. And then I really appreciate for like the time which you have given. We exceeded like the scheduled time, but with the conversations were so interesting and then enriching for us. I couldn't hold it. I said like, okay, let's continue. So even if it overshoot that assigned time, but really appreciate that. And then thanks a lot. Thanks a ton from myself as well as from the automation age, and looking forward to keep in touch with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and I wish all of you in Automation Edge all the very best.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhananjay,
Thank you,
sir.
everyone.